Hi, welcome back to the Wisdom of Your Soul. I'm your host, Janice Mary, and I'm so glad you're back with us. I have a really interesting mantra for us to do this morning. When I woke up this morning, instead of writing out a post, I decided I would just tape a show. So here I am. So I hope that this helps you today. So what I felt this morning when I was connecting to my soul and doing, a short little meditation, which really isn't a formal meditation. When I wake in the morning, I just ask my soul. I kind of go into that energy that lives within our body, that really is who we are. It's hard sometimes for me to wrap my brain around it. So if you're just beginning learning how to connect to your soul, it might be difficult for you to also understand, but you don't really have to. The mind, again, is so limiting. So we sometimes have to just move out of the limitation and just trust that what we know to be true is really true, because the knowing is much, much stronger than the mind. So this morning, I just ask, what is it that I need to know today, and what is it that I could share? What's going to help me in my life and the lives of the people that I work with, and then also with you. So what I heard this morning was a mantra, which was, just a really nice mantra. And I'll tell you, this is what it is. I am so much more than I think. And it's just a very simple mantra. And if you just say that to yourself all day today, I am so much more than I think, it really does kind of get your mind out of that negative place. And it also gets your mind out of just thinking your normal everyday thoughts. So anytime, in your day today that your thoughts are just kind of running and they're a little bit on automatic pilot, and you start to feel that they're triggering you in any way, shape, or form, whether they're triggering you in a fearful way, whether they're triggering you in an insecure way. Sometimes people wake up in the morning and start thinking about things that just instantly trigger them. So before that happens, I try to connect with my soul, and that really, really helps me. So it puts me in a good place to start my day. So I hope that helps for you too. And I feel like this is a very loaded mantra, because I am so much more than I think is very telling to me when I was kind of questioning, I'm so much more than I think. So what does that exactly mean? And then I instantly heard, your mind, what you think, is so limited that you can't possibly see the totality of you as a soul. You can't possibly think into how much you are, not how less you are. So our minds won't let us see the truth of us, which is all really, really good. And I thought that was really, really interesting and very exciting too. So if I know that my mind is so limited, it'll never let me see the, myself in full, then I can try to challenge myself out of my mind a little bit and more into that soul energy. So what we really have to do is say, okay, my mind can only take me so much. So my mind can only take me so far. I mean, our minds are wonderful, and they can do many wonderful things and create and invent and do all those things just like a computer. But when it comes to evaluating ourselves, our minds can only go so far. So that's what the soul was encouraging me to move out of, that what you think, you can't possibly think correctly about you. And I can see that about myself, and I can see that about my clients, that, it's hard to not think that somehow you're less than, it's hard to not constantly compare yourself to other people. And especially in this day and age with all the social media, we just compare ourselves relentlessly to other people, and we have a lot of more avenues now to do it than we ever have. And social media can be a beautiful thing, but it also can be a very comparative thing for people, and can be something that causes people a lot of pain. I know a lot of my clients will come in and talk about what they've seen on Facebook or Instagram, and how other people's lives look like they're so much better than theirs, and the pain that causes within them. So I kind of try to help them to see, well, okay, you don't know what's going on in other people's lives, but let's say, they are having this great life, which is great for them. I'm glad they're having a great life. What is it saying about you if you are jealous of other people's lives? Maybe, perhaps, you're just not doing the things you want to do. So let's look at the things you want to do instead of getting caught up on what everybody else is doing. Because sometimes what everybody else is doing looks good, but it's not something I would ever want to do. I might not want to travel to Africa, but if I see somebody on a safari, I might be so jealous of that. But then when it really comes down to it, is that one of my desires? No, not really. So we always have to be very careful and question ourselves a little bit about what we're getting jealous of and how to handle that. And that helps the trigger of not feeling good enough. So if we're saying our mantra and we're looking at Facebook, that could help, because it takes you out of your mind. It takes you out of the limits of being human, and it takes you out of the rat race of this world. So if I know that I'm so much more than I could ever imagine, then Facebook seems pretty small. When you put it in that kind of perspective, your whole perspective changes. So that kind of mantra is a perspective change, and broadens us and helps us to move out of the limitations of the mind. And that's what's really, really important. And if you ask yourself, I am so much more than I think, if you ask yourself, does that resonate at all? Is there a knowing about that? Don't think about it, because your mind's not going to let you. But if there's a knowing that, yeah, I think that could be true, not only for me, but for everybody. We are all so much more than we think and know. Science is just at the tip of the iceberg of figuring out, how complex, complicated, and how wonderful we truly are. But we tend to stay more on the negative end of things, which is we're more less than more than. So, that sign in math, less than, more than, let's stay on the more than sign and not the less than, because we'll feel so much better. And when we stay that we're in that mantra of I am more than I think, it's an individual thing too. It's not an ego thing. I'm not saying I'm more than I'm thinking, I'm better than you, which the ego loves to do. The ego is all full of comparison. I'm going to compare myself to somebody else. And also the state of I think more than I am, when that comes from the ego, it's very temporary, because the ego needs things to feel that way. So when the ego is saying I'm more than I think, it'll be more like I'm more than I think because I'm making a lot of money. I'm more than I think because I have a big house. I'm more than I think because, I've created this beautiful life. And all those things are temporary. All those things are temporary. So one day we may have a lot of money, and the next day we may lose it all. So if we're basing our whole sense of worth on the ego is very, very fragile and very volatile. And one day the ego will be agreeing that this thing is the thing that's making you wonderful, and then the next day it's not enough. So today the money might be enough, and then tomorrow it's just nothing. So that's what the ego does. It's constantly getting us to look to the next thing, which isn't bad. I mean, it's very motivating on some level. But if it gets us in this rat race of thinking, that sometimes we don't even know why we're doing what we're doing. There's a great book called Start With Why. And just the title, you don't even have to read the book. Start with why. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Am I doing what I'm doing because my ego is telling me to do it? Or am I doing it because I really, really love what I'm doing, and I really have a great desire around what I'm doing? So we always have to be questioning ourselves, because we are so brainwashed by the world and by all the social media, which kind of tells us what we should and shouldn't be doing. So getting back to my clients, if they come in and they're jealous of Facebook, I first have to ask them, are people doing anything that you truly, truly would want to be doing? And usually the answer is no, because a lot of times we do the things we truly, truly want to do. Would it be great if we could travel more and do more things? Yes, that would be great. But we truly get to do the things that are the most important to us, that really is in our heart. If we're a family person, we spend time with our family. If we like to go out to the movies or do stuff like that, we get to do that. So, we do, for the most part, a lot of the things that we love to do. It's just that sometimes, if we just in this constant evaluation of ourselves, which is what social media does, then we feel like a failure. We're feeling like we're failing. And, because I do this work and talk with so many people, I can see where people's minds are going and what they're struggling with and what they're being triggered with. So that's why it's so important when we do something different, like asking our soul or asking spirit or asking God or, your angels, whatever you resonate with. When you go into a different place, you do get a different perspective, and it's all about perspective. So we have the ego's perspective, and then we have the soul's perspective. And I'll have to say, every time I consult with the soul, it's a much, much more loving, kind, uplifting, and helpful perspective. And sometimes I even question it. It's like, wow, that is so loving and so kind. Is that really real? And, that's my ego trying to doubt something that's good. Why would we doubt something that's good? It sounds crazy. How can I just, think good about myself and other people? But the ego is definitely always on the side of, be careful and don't trust that. And, that's just the ego. So we just have to continue to challenge ourselves to move out of the ego. So a mantra like this is basically all it's doing is trying to get you out of your thoughts. So the minute you start thinking about something, say, you have a worry about, your children. And so that starts running in your mind. And then all of a sudden it starts triggering other things. And then it's starting to trigger your own past and your own growing up. Then you're off and running, and you could be living in an internal state all day long about being worried about your children. So if you say this mantra in the middle of that and say, I'm so much more than I think, that first of all interferes in your mind. It breaks it. And that's helpful in and of itself. So if you just said this mantra over and over and over, guess what you're doing? You're not thinking anymore. Or you're slowing that thought process down. You're slowing the triggering mechanism that's happening within you. So if you have to say it all day long to stop that triggering mechanism, I would recommend it. Or I would do something else that I like to do that would get me out of my mind. So it does sound difficult, but it really isn't once you kind of get the hang of it. But a mantra is a really nice, easy way to remind yourself of really who you are. And the minute you remind yourself of who you are, you do have a sense of knowing. Just ask yourself, does that resonate with you? I am more than I think. I am so much more than I think. If that resonates with you, take that with you today and let that statement prove your day. Instead of I am so much less than, I'm so inferior, you don't want to take that into your day, because then again, like we talk about, we're creating an internal state that is really not, it's just hellish. It's just not a good place to be. So we have the mantra or we have the ego, and that's really our choice. And we want to stay more, with the mantra, because that's our soul energy. And our soul, again, has nothing but nice, loving, kind words to say to you. So let's stick with that.